from the crypt.
Hello, boils and ghouls. Welcome to a very special interview episode of Dads from the Crypt. My name is Jason, and returning to us to the Crypt is Mr. Hunter Gorinson, president and publisher of Oni Press. Welcome back, sir.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be back. Thank you so much for having me, Jason.
Oh, yes. I was trying to think. I think it was a year ago, last May. So it's been a chunk of time. So it's going to be interesting to see where you are a year plus later in this journey you've been on through EC Comics.
Feels like 1 million years ago. So it's hard to believe that it was like, we announced this entire thing like 18 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
A lot has happened since then.
In many ways, yes. But let me start off by saying personally, I've immensely enjoyed all the work you guys are doing. And it's been great just jumping back into a whole new line of, EC comics. It's just been a real joy to have, those just kind of churning out and seeing where everything's been going. It's been really enjoyable.
That's incredible. It's incredibly kind of you to say, and very much appreciate you picking up the books and giving them a chance. And I've been into it with retailers and creators and readers at every possible level over the course of the past year, and the reception has been nothing short of phenomenal. This is the great joy of my professional career in comics, to be able to work on this. So we're here. We're excited for the work we've done. We're pumped for what's coming next, and we ain't stopping anytime soon.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. So, as we said last year, ton of buzz around, all the announcements and everything. Now that you've been through it for a year, what's your biggest takeaway from this experience?
My biggest takeaway from this experience is it's incredibly, and I'm trying to say this in like a non-grandiose way. When this started, this was an idea that I was intensely passionate about and that I thought could work, and that a lot of powerful or micromanaging people in the business of making comics told me was a terrible idea, and that was full of folly, and for reasons all their own wanted to chip little pieces off of it or prevent us from doing it for a variety of reasons. And now here we are 2 years later, and we've run the gamut, almost 2 years later, and run the gamut from tiny idea that's keeping you up at night to getting the Gaines family on board with the idea, collaborating on a bunch of stories, getting Lee Bermejo and Greg Smallwood to draw covers, selling almost 100,000 copies in the first issue, getting an Eisner Award nomination. Like in the business that I'm in, that's kind of like the critical commercial grand slam of things you can do. So seeing the reviews and having them be terrific, get to work with creators who I admire and respect on a bunch of levels, getting the entire Oni team to rally around this idea. It's just been incredibly gratifying to have a little tiny idea. I've always said that making comics kind of is like, it's like you capture like a spark, you know what I mean? And then your job is to like protect that spark in your hands until you can find a way for it to catch light. And this thing is very much, we're not, I wouldn't say we're full to like, we're well on our way to having a raging bonfire at this point. You know what I
mean? Right. Were there any unexpected challenges in bringing these comics back that you didn't foresee when you first started?
There was a ton. So like if you go back and look at Epitaphs from the Abyss specifically, there's a bunch of stuff in there that I would consider that's almost like a prototype book. And I think we've solved, not that there was problems, but we had to creatively come up with solutions for. Like when we started commissioning stories for Epitaphs, I'm not too shy to say, like we didn't know who the horror hosts were going to be definitively. That's why they're not in the stories, or at least most of the stories. So that's why we had to create things like those frontispieces that Dustin Weaver was drawing to go in there because we couldn't put them into the stories. And even if we did put them into the stories, we didn't know what their voices were yet, and then we'd have them like 75 different ways by 12 different writers. You know what I mean?
That's been one of my favorite parts is seeing the horror host kind of evolving and kind of,
Yes.
it
So,
really adds a lot. It's the special sauce.
and that was another thing. Like Dustin Weaver just absolutely,
Mm.
like I'm not sure in another artist's hands if that would have been such a compelling idea, but he really got into it. You know what I mean? And they are some of my favorite pieces from the EC line as a whole, is what Dustin did. So Dustin has a forever lifetime pass to come contribute to these books in any way he shall wish in the future.
Yeah, it's fun because I was doing reviews of, especially in the beginning, and with Al Katz, who was a writer on Tales from the Crypt, the TV show. He's a little bit of a performer himself, so I was having him do dramatic readings from some of the host segments, and
Very nice.
that was just a joy to watch and put out there. Just to put a potential, bring it a little bit more to life, in his own interpretation. But who better than someone who wrote for the Crypt Keeper.
No, that's awesome. And I believe that I personally wrote all of the Gravediggers intros except one.
That's nice.
I missed a deadline. So most of that,
How dare you?
most of that is pure Gorinsonism on the page.
Do you know how much that must infuriate the publisher and the editors when you miss a deadline?
Indeed.
Now, one of the things I'm very curious about is obviously, the story dictates everything, but like, how do you go about matching a story with a style and making it more hyper realistic or hyper stylized, and kind of finding that balance? Because it's very interesting to think about how different artists, even within the same book, would be mixed and matched together.
Yeah, with an art style, it's that I'll be honest, that question at this point is probably more well directed towards our editor-in-chief Sierra, who is like riding shotgun. I was riding shotgun with her on the first year of these books, you know what I mean? And then we brought in our old pal, a very talented editor, or senior editor, I should say, at Oni by the name of Allison Gronowitz, who we both worked with at Boom, who is now completely in charge of the EC line at Oni. But they both, between them, essentially we all showed up with short lists of artists who we wanted to work with that fell into what we thought could constitute like the corpus of the new EC. You know what I mean? Some folks proactively reached out and got added to those lists once these books were out in the world. Like not a week goes by at this point where I don't have some creator reach out to me and say, hey, I love what you guys are doing on EC. Can I get in there at some point? It's happening pretty regularly. And I'm excited to say, it happened a bunch at San Diego Comic-Con, so there'll be some new folks joining up soon. Mostly, I would say, off the top, I think there were some folks who were like, these are more horror artists, these are more sci-fi artists. And then there's ones who could walk in both worlds. You know what I mean? Folks like Kano, I was like, who I think is probably one of our identified as one of our primary EC artists at this point. I was like, something about Kano, who I've worked with a bunch in the past, prior to Oni and EC, has a little bit of that Jack Davis, Harvey Kurtzman cartooning quality to him, where he can make stuff that's scary and gory, but also still kind of fun and a little wry. And I was like, he's in the strike zone. He could draw whatever he wants. So sometimes we have a particular story. Sometimes an artist comes in and says, I would like this artist to draw X story. I would love to tell you that there's a particular formula. There's not. It's a little bit in the magic of editing comics itself.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, how have your goals with the EC Comics evolved since you started?
If anything, we've exceeded our goals. So originally, if you think way back, I think when we talked, Epitaphs was supposed to be a 5-issue limited series, as was Cruel Universe. These were going to be limited series. I had my own personal aspirations for how well they would do, but I didn't want to get to a point where I was forced to cancel an EC, to be the first person to cancel an EC comic book since 1955. That would be a giant L. You know what I mean? And I think it would also be, I don't want to damage the EC brand and legacy in any way, even though I think we're doing our own distinct thing. But they started off as 5-issue limited series. We got the orders for Epitaphs number 1 and 2, extended it to 12 based on those. Frankly, we could have just kept Epitaphs going as a series but we wanted to introduce a new host. I wanted to get to the Tormentor, so we wanted to do Catacomb. And then originally we were going to maybe come up with another title other than Cruel Universe for our second science fiction title, and the same would be Catacomb and Torment. And we all thought to ourselves, we put so much blood, sweat, and tears into designing up Cruel Universe already. That's the one. That's the one that it's my favorite name of the bunch. You know what I mean? And we said, let's just bring it back for another run, and we'll probably keep doing that in perpetuity for as long as we can. Like I would fully expect after Cruel Universe 2 wraps up that we'll go back for a volume 3 at some point. No doubt.
Right, and then you also have a new. It looked like a Western, more themed.
Yes, so we're gonna do. We did our first special, which was Shiver Suspense Stories, last Christmas. We're gonna do another one of those again this year. But part of what was always in the plan, the original plan for EC at Oni included Epitaphs, a horror anthology, a science fiction anthology, a sword and sorcery anthology, or dark fantasy, which is what Cruel Kingdom became, a book like Blood Type that would spin out of a story that was introduced in a book, and then genre specials, so that we could go do crime, war, romance, westerns. There's a fifth one that we're going to do that I'm not going to spoil here because it's the coolest comic idea I've ever had in my entire life. And it's not a tried and true standalone genre unto itself, but it will make sense when we talk about it. But tons of stuff in that vein, because to me, if this was another publisher, they would be like, here's Tales from the Crypt #1 and Weird Science #1, and just run that train as long as they could, and then cancel it after 10 issues or whatever, once they'd run out of variant covers to get up and running. You know what I mean? And for me, part of the magic of what makes EC one of the greatest comic book publishers of all time is that it's not just horror and science fiction. That was part of it, no doubt, but it was a multifaceted. There was other facets on the gem. There was westerns and obviously Two-Fisted and Frontline Combat, and other forms of genre, crime, suspense story, shock, etc. in there. And it couldn't be just reduced down to those two things. And I think in order to have EC fully be embodied in the 21st century, we got to get some other genres in there at some point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to the Outlaw Showdown. I think that's what it's called.
I just got a page of art in from Tony Moore for his story that he's writing and drawing. Editor Matt Dreyer, who's been working with Tony on this, I believe this is Tony's first interior work in more than 5 years, and it is face-meltingly awesome, both literally and figuratively.
That's really cool. I'm very excited. Have you been in contact with the Gaines family? Have they been involved, or have you got feedback or anything from them?
They're intimately involved. So every page of every book, that every cover, every logo, like we're in constant conversations with the Gaines family on everything. They're 100% our partners, so we are locked arms on every word, every sentence, every image that's in these books. They have been involved in to some degree.
That's great. Now, going back to that, how do you balance the legacy of EC Comics with the need to, innovate for modern audiences, and kind of, there's a lot of people who have a lot of nostalgia, a lot of people who are newer, a lot of people in the middle who are just experiencing it for the first time. How do you balance that?
Yeah, so originally, and you heard me say this, and I still stand by this, I think it would have been the wrong call to do look, it's comics. There's a huge element of nostalgia that's factored into everything in comics, and it's almost inescapable at certain points. But what I didn't want to do was do full 1950s like nostalgia tripping about these. Because the audience for that is getting smaller every year as nature takes its course, obviously. But also, like, I think the power of the core of what makes EC work is timeless to some degree. So if we got back to setting all these stories in 1954 and finding a Johnny Craig clone to draw them and doing the same volume of word balloons on the page and stuff, like, I actually think that would get pretty old pretty fast. And I was also really reticent. I was talking to Chris Condon very, very early on, who's a terrific writer and one of our most prolific collaborators, contributors to these books at this point. But he was like, you should put classic EC stories in the back of like of Epitaphs #1 and Cruel Universe #1. And I was like, I don't know, like we're like immediately not going in our own direction. We're like lumping ourselves in with that stuff. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Then we did it for Shiver Suspense Stories as a bonus, which I was pretty happy with. And actually we've, as you know, we've been putting the remastered editions of some of my favorite stories or our favorite stories from the original EC library into Catacomb #1 and Cruel Universe #1. We'll probably do there'll be one in Outlaw, and there'll be one in Shiver Suspense Stories 2 in the winter. And I actually think those have helped add a degree of context to what we're doing. You know what I mean? Like derelict, because it would be, there's 2 political stories in Cruel Universe #1. You know what I mean? Of 3 stories. And as you know, we live in a politically fraught modern landscape, and there's been a small, highly misinformed percentage of people who've read these books that do the mouth breathing internet troll thing of like, when did comics get so political? This is BS. Comics aren't political. And then you read like Derelict Ship, which is about like guys sacrificing themselves to keep space fascism from emerging back into the universe or whatever. And it's like, oh no, it was always like this. This is one of the central strands of what makes EC compelling. You know what I mean? Is the co-mingling and social themes.
Well, it's interesting because I noticed over the past year or so, there, especially like on Threads or on Twitter, there's been this whole argument like, is horror political, like horror movies and stuff? And people are like, no, yes, no, yeah. I'm like, really, all art is reflection of its time, which includes, whatever's happening in the social ether, which inherently makes it political. So my theory is all art is a product of its environment, which is inherently political to a degree, whether, how much people want to acknowledge that or realize that, or how much it's being highlighted is, varying degrees, but it's all there. Nothing is a vacuum.
Of any comic book publisher that you're going to say that ever had a political, socio-political, cultural bent to its work, it would be EC. They would be the #1 example. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where was I? You mentioned some of your favorite stories. What are some of your favorite original EC stories?
Oh, so my favorite EC story is oh my god, I'm gonna botch the actual name. We were just talking about it last week. I think it's Only Skin Deep is the actual title, which is a Cayman story, which I believe was in Vault of Horror. It may be in Tales from the Crypt. I read it as a reprint in the 90s, but it's the one that I remember reading as a kid. And it's about the guy who goes to the Halloween party and he meets a beautiful woman dressed as a witch, and they decide to get married, and then yada, 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 he rips her face off. And in that story, that's another one where it's like that story doesn't appear to be innately political. It may not even been conceived as being political, but there's a massive amount of subtext in it about like toxic masculinity and male insecurity. You know what I mean? That's gotten more potent as the decades have gone by, and it looks rad as hell. It's a beautiful story.
Yeah, that's incidentally, that's also my favorite of the Tales of the Crypt TV shows. With Sherry Rose.
Is there an episode based on that one? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, with starring Sherry Rose, and I think it's directed by William Malone too. It's a very, very good episode. From, I'm just pulling it up, season 6, episode 2. And the comic source is from Tales from the Crypt number 38.
Nice.
So,
and then obviously like Yellow, which is a classic top 10 EC story. It was obviously made into both an episode, both a TV, like a mini TV movie or whatever, and then was the show. Like that thing is not just a great EC story. That might be like one of the best short stories like of the 20th century. Like I tell people to read that. When we're thinking about what kind of impact you can make in comics, because that thing will ruin your day. You know what I mean?
Right. Again, and that's the one I quote most as my favorite from the TV show, because I keep saying like it goes beyond the Tales from the Crypt TV show into like one of the best episodes of TV ever made, in my opinion.
Yes, I have. I probably saw the Kirk Douglas one on TV as a kid, but I haven't seen it in 30 years, so I should rewatch it.
You should watch that. Yeah, I just very distinctly remember watching that when I was a kid and just being blown away by that.
Cool.
There's so many great cameos in that episode too, but it's also a fantastic comic. What's been the best feedback or most like satisfying feedback you've gotten from fans?
From fans,
or from critics, but you know, we're here for the fans.
I would say most of the reception. Look, I'll say this, which is usually I just got back from San Diego Comic-Con. Got back from San Diego Comic-Con. Oni typically has been sponsoring a gala event. It's not really a gala, but a signature event of San Diego Comic-Con called the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund Annual Welcome Party, which is a party that's open to the public. If you're ever in San Diego, you should definitely come by. It's the one kind of egalitarian function in San Diego where there's no guest list, but every creator who's in San Diego will be there. Every publisher, editor, etc. It's a great industry party. But usually part of my job while I'm there is if I see a retailer who I know, I buy them a drink because they keep the lights on. And 3 retailers, no joke, Scout's Honor, Swear on a Stack of Bibles, Swear on a Stack of EC Comics, all said, no, I'm buying you a drink this year because we have sold so many EC Comics. Thank you for doing this. Which is about comic book retailers. I don't know how much experience you have with them, Jason. Not really lining up to throw out the compliments or the big attaboys. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that means a lot to me.
That's great. Now, one of the things that surprised in a year full of really great surprises, they're like every couple of months is like, you know, Christmas morning, just getting another announcement, another great gift. But one of the most interesting ones is Blood Type, which is the first mini like continuing series. Tell me about how that came to development.
It's real simple, which is we knew from the beginning that we wanted to throw out like a curveball and I'll be honest, it was almost a backstop too. Like, are people going to buy anthology comics in the year 2024 or 2025? Typically, the common wisdom is that anthologies do not work and you should not make them. And I also knew that like, if we're relaunching one of the most beloved brands in comics or creating a new derivation of it, we kind of have to start in the place that the fans accept and are familiar with, which is the anthology. So we have to start with the horror anthology. And just because I want to do it a science fiction anthology, you know what I mean? But I always knew that we would want to navigate and essentially do our Demon Knight. You know what I mean? Like, how do you do a full-length EC story? And I loved the idea of secretly launching it out of a short. Because you do have some of these stories, you're like, wow, I wish I could go back and like live in that world a little bit more. And so we knew we wanted to do that. There was no preconceived plan. This was totally organic, which is before issue 1 had come out, Corinna Bechko had turned in Blood Type. It was originally called Blood Oath, actually. Had turned in the story, and I read it, and I loved the energy of the character, which is essentially like a bon vivant vampire who loves being a vampire and is having a great time. It isn't necessarily evil, but is like a vehicle to have like EC style mayhem ensue wherever she goes. And because she's a vampire, she's the rare protagonist in an EC story who doesn't die at the end. You know what I mean? So the story can't get, and it literally ends on like a cliffhanger. And so we started thinking about that. And I've always been a big fan of like what I guess is the collision that you would call like beach goth tone, which is like horrific stuff happening in like a sunshiny, beautiful place. So Corinna came back. We had a conversation over breakfast at San Diego Comic-Con last year, the day before, the day after the first EC panel we had. and said, "Hey, what about Ada, that vampire?" And then she went away and came back with Blood Type. And it's been a true blast to work on. It's also not without its challenges, because about how you maintain the EC tone across 4 issues, etc. But it's been fun, and then it really snapped into place too when Andrea Sorrentino, full credit to Sierra Hahn for bringing in Andrea, who also did some of my favorite artwork on EC shorts as well, but to come in and do 4 issues of this and has been just absolutely crushing it. So unique series. I'm very, very hopeful that we're going to do more. When we do them, I want them to be special. So it probably won't be a thing you'll be able to predict on a regular schedule, but we like to keep people on their toes and do one of these when the moment calls for it, for sure.
Yeah, it's been very interesting to read an issue in knowing that I'm going to get some more of that flavor, because there's definitely like if there's one gripe I have with some of these, it's like I want more in that universe, especially with the Cruel Universe ones, because they build these interesting worlds and concepts. I'm like, I want to explore more of that. So it's very exciting to the idea of coming back to some of those.
100%. And I will say they don't necessarily have to be horror either. We could theoretically do this with any genre we wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I think that's what I'm saying. Sci-fi really lends itself to that, because you're building out these high concepts, and I want to see how it applies to different things. Are there any plans for like collections, archival, like paperbacks, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, the first trade here. I'm going to get you a visual aid. The first trade paperbacks for both. I should speak clearly. Sorry. The first trade paperbacks for. Oh, look, here's a Wallywood weird sex fantasy sketch, like prelim I bought that I lost. It was sitting on my shelf. Hooray! I found it. It was between 2 EC trade paperbacks. Epitaphs from the Abyss is out in trade paperback right now, which collects the first 4 issues. We also have these like limited editions. We're going to do a series of what we're calling EC exclusives for each volume of any EC collection going forward. That'll just be available either at conventions or on the website, but they have like little foil accents, etc. And some of our alternate favorite covers. That one's by Adam Polina. And then Cruel Universe just came out too, which I don't have in front of me. And then everything is solicited. So like Cruel Kingdom is solicited, the first 3 volumes of Epitaphs. And I'm happy to say today I am putting the finishing touches on our solicitation information, because we will definitely do a big EC Epitaphs from the Abyss oversized hardcover with all 12 issues in it, and probably a special slipcase upgrade as a direct market exclusive or something, should anyone be interested.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And what about any multimedia expansions, film, TV, podcasts, anything else like that?
Stuff we're talking about all the time. We're fully engaged with the Gaines family on that. I don't want to tempt. We have a lot of conversations. So I don't want to tip my hand too much, but that is something that's very much in the mix and in the offing. A primary concern will always be with making good comics first, but with a brand of DC's pedigree, it is not surprising that people have come calling to find out what's up with these books.
It's exciting to hear.
Yeah.
Now, again, I keep saying we do this for the fans, and one of our best fan groups is I want to shout out the EC Fanatic Facebook group. So I asked for them to send them some questions, because I want them to have get some of their input and their interest as well. So here's a couple, a bit of a quick fire from them.
Bring it.
If an artist was interested in submitting art for consideration, how would they go about that?
You can send stuff to marketing to an email address called marketing@onipress.com. We sometimes get blind submissions in there. I cannot guarantee that you will get a response, but a human being will 100% look at it. I promise you.
Okay, great.
Do not send ideas. I would say this: do not send ideas for EC stories. As anyone who's been reading comics for as long as we have knows, you can't do that for like a number of reasons. If you do that, it means we can't read it and have to delete it immediately. But you can send artist samples or whatever. That's totally okay.
Yeah, that's good to know. And what can fans do to keep the line alive, undead or otherwise, and thriving? Obviously, outside of buying the comics, what else can they do?
I think they're doing it. Like pre-order the books at your local retailer. Put in a substandard subscription if you want to have every single issue of Cruel Universe. Most comic book store or Catacomb or one of the one shots we're doing, most comic book stores base their numbers off the number of existing subscribers they have. So they say, I have 10 subscribers, so I'll order 5 more for the shelf. I have 20 subscribers, I'll order 10 more. There's a math equation that goes into it like that. So the more subscribers we have, the more copies wind up on the shelf, the more people can find these books through sheer discoverability. I recently had a retailer tell me that they've taken their EC back issues and put them next to the register in their own spinner rack because people are just so drawn to the covers and trade dress that they'll just impulse buy them next to the register. So keep spreading that word of mouth and getting them into people's hands, and I'm pretty sure they sell themselves once people have a chance to take a look at them.
Nice. What conventions are on the schedule for Oni this year?
Oni will be appearing at New York. Actually, two breaking ones. I should say 3. There's 3. I like to think of this as the convention off season, but there's so many damn conventions. We'll definitely be appearing in some capacity at Baltimore Comic-Con, which I believe is in October this year. It is my original hometown show. Great show for EC books if you're ever wanting to go shopping. Terrific spread of back issues and such of Golden Age and pre-code horror. We're sponsoring the Ringo Awards there, so I'll definitely be there for that. We will be having some sort of presence at New York Comic-Con. I don't think I'm allowed to talk about panels and stuff yet, but we'll be making an appearance there. And then we'll also be appearing at, and again, I'm probably jumping ship by talking about these things, but for anyone who's in the Greensboro, Raleigh, Durham area of North Carolina, we will be at NC Comic-Con, which is run by the folks from Ultimate Comics, one of the greatest chains of comic book stores in the good old US of A, and setting up shop there in the first weekend of November, I believe, and we'll definitely have a rack of EC stuff with us.
Great. Any chance for any EC fan addict specials or more shout outs to that?
What do you mean?
Well, you know how they had like the club and the certificates and
Oh, so I had a whole plan. We put out that EC fan addict Richard Corbin cover, which I have the original Angolan poster hanging up there behind me last summer at the panel in San Diego. That's turned out to be a pretty hefty collector's item. Surprised or not surprised. I didn't think it would be. I thought it would be like a $25 book. I didn't think it would be a $250 book. You know what I mean?
Right.
But hey, it's Corbin, and it's awesome. So I had another one of those I wanted to do. I couldn't get it done in time by a different artist. I couldn't get it done in time for San Diego this year. So instead, I gave out uncut blood type #1 cover sheets. And the printer was supposed to cut them out as like single covers, but they gave me 4, like the way that they run. So they're huge. I'm not sure if you saw this in the fan addict group or not. I think a couple people posted them on eBay or whatever, but they're super cool. But I like doing stuff like that. So I want to do another fan addict variant at some point of like a key. Maybe it doesn't have to be a key issue. We write our own rules around here. We'll figure it out. But I like to do something like, I'd like to continue doing fan addict covers by people like Corbin, who, to my mind at least, represent the generational bridge from like post EC, but being deeply influenced by it into the annals of comics history. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. That sounds amazing. And then, are there any new artists we should be looking out for? Is there anyone on your wish list that you want to tease?
Oh my gosh. I'm going to be so unprepared. I'm so unprepared. I would give a shout out to Sammy Cavella, who is a very, very talented European artist who's going to be doing a lot of work for Oni in the near future, but is definitely making their Oni debut on some upcoming EC titles, and will also be in Shiver Suspense Stories, I believe, with a story by Ben H. Winters. I've already shouted out Tony Moore, who will be on the old Outlaw Showdown in October, and then trust me, we got plenty of surprises up our sleeve down the line. I promise.
No, I have full faith at this point. Really excited. Before we wrap up, is there anything else, any other announcements you want to make that we haven't got to?
No, I would say keep your eyes on these books. Like they're very much a top priority for us at Oni. They're the best-selling line of books in the history of Oni Press, which is insane to say, given that the company's 30 years old. They're a ton of work. There's a ton of people putting their best creative energy and blood, sweat, and tears. Blood, sweat, and tears into these books. If anything, we've given ourselves the directive to make them more violent and bloodier. So, like, I think if you can even see from looking at Catacomb of Torment, like they're number 1, and the poor dolphin from Cruel Universe 2, number 1, they've gotten even gorier. So we're putting our full love of EC into these things, and anyone who wants, they're very accessible. You know what I mean? So you can pick up any issue. You don't have to start at number 1. Give one a shot, and it's been very encouraging just to see people respond to be like, you know what I was missing in my life was a dark AF, but also Riley funny anthology story in the year 2025 that has really brightened me up. So dark content for dark times, my friend.
Right. We all need a good laugh one way or another. Yeah. All right. Well, Hunter, thank you so much for coming back. Hopefully next year we'll get you back again and have even more amazing announcements and stories to talk about.
Anytime. Thank you so much, Jason. Always a pleasure, and appreciate your time.
All right. All right. And I appreciate everyone for listening. I'd really appreciate it if everyone would give Dads from the Crypt a rating or review on iTunes, a rating on Spotify, a like and subscribe on YouTube, and follow us at Dads from the Crypt Talk on TikTok. And with that, I thank you for listening to Dads from the Crypt.
Follow Dads from the Crypt on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or I will follow you to the grave. No, seriously, you really should watch. But be careful what you ask for. You may get it.